everybody, and welcome back to the Daft on Draft podcast. Today, we have a mailbag. We love answering your questions. It is engaging, first of all. Second of all, it makes it so we don't have to think about a topic to talk about because you guys are giving us the topics. But I am not doing that alone. I have my co-host with me, Corey Kinnan. Corey, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. My combine credentials came through today, so I'm ready to roll for next week. I have Thursday, Friday off work, dropping the kids off at the in-laws house. My in-laws live in Indianapolis, which is really nice. So I'm just dropping my kids off at my in-laws house. My wife gets 4 days to our house here in Columbus by herself, so she's happy about that too. And so, I'm ready for a good week next week, but work to be done this week. My daughter was homesick from daycare today, so that's always rough to try to find time to get some work done. But she took 2 pretty decent naps. So I was able to get some Browns wire stuff done, was able to get some other stuff done, some charting for reception perception done as well. So pretty productive day overall, despite my daughter being very clingy. But yeah, ready to roll.
Let's get it. Let's get into it.
All right. So mailbag's question. This is a Cowboy specific question where this individual laid out 3 separate drafts scenarios for the Cowboys, and we get to pick one that we like the best. The first scenario is round 1, Ashton Jeanty. Second round, Elikem Ayumanor. Third round, Deion Walker, defensive tackle out of Kentucky. Second scenario is first round, Mason Graham. Second round, Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa. Third round, Isaiah Bond, wide receiver, Texas. The third scenario is wide receiver Teteroa McMillan in the first round, defensive tackle Alfred Collins in the second round, running back Quinshon Judkins in the third round. Which of those is your most favorable scenario for the Dallas Cowboys?
I think from a needs perspective, the third one is probably the best, but I'm not drafting for need purely. I'm drafting for
getting
good
the best
players,
getting
the best football players. And the trio of Mason Graham, who I think is a top 5 player in this class, Caleb Johnson, who I think is RB2 and is like player number 16 for me in this class. And then Isaiah Bond, who was my preseason wide receiver 1 and has a ton of talent. That's more of like a Cowboys second round pick because they have what is called the Blue Star Special, where they draft like a hurt guy or an off-field guy. With that second round pick, they just always seem to do that. But for me, it's that second one. It's Mason Graham. I think he's a true difference maker. And then we have 2 Michigan guys on the interior, and one of the Michigan guys, Mozzie Smith, is starting to play better football. We'll see if that continues next year in a different scheme. But Caleb Johnson and Isaiah Bond, 2 offensive weapons, and the Cowboys desperately need offensive weapons aside from CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I think that's the direction I'd go as well, because again, at pick number 76 with picking Isaiah Bond, who has all the talent in the world, but has, the ankle injury, the whether or not he was checked in, checked out after that injury, didn't really produce down the stretch. Matthew Golden was kind of the reception hog and the main or primary target there down the stretch. It's kind of some stuff there to deal with, but the dead money with the 76th overall pick, if it doesn't work out, is so minimal that I think you take that shot there in the third round. Again, I'm not an anti-running back in the first round kind of guy, but I don't love the value of Ashton Jeanty at 12 compared to Caleb Johnson in the second round, who I have also as a top 20 player on my board. Again, Ashton Jeanty is the third player on my board though, so like I would get it. I would really get it. Deion Walker, though, is a player who I'm probably going to have a day 3 grade on, and a guy that I just probably wouldn't draft if I were an NFL GM, to be completely honest. I mean, all of these have their warts, right? Quinshon Judkins, another guy I've got probably a low 4th round grade on, so taking him in the 3rd round. Alfred Collins getting a stout run stuff for the 2nd round, I think, is fine value. Tet McMillan at 12 is fine value as well. So I don't have much qualms with the 3rd scenario either, but again, at that 2nd scenario, you're getting my number 5 player and like my number 18 player. So I think that's definitely the way to go.
I agree. Yep. Next question.
Second question here. And this one, I really like this question. Which team could benefit most from a trade up in the NFL draft, and which team could benefit most from a trade down in the NFL draft?
For me, I'm going to attack the trade down because trade up is really difficult to really parse that out in this class. I think for me, the trade down candidate is the New England Patriots. They don't need a quarterback. They have their quarterback of the future. They do need a weapon, and they do need offensive line. I don't think that the value at 4 is there for either of those positions. So the best thing would be for a quarterback to still be on the board and somebody to want to move up to that 4th pick. They get a little bit of a king's ransom for it. And New England's roster overall needs an overhaul. So getting those extra picks for them would also be huge.
And again, there are receivers on the trade market. Again, short stopgap guys like Cooper Kupp, I think would be excellent in New England because he kind of has that same skill set as a Jalen Polk or a Javon Baker, and those guys didn't produce and seemed like kind of needed to grow up a little bit in their rookie season in New England. So getting a veteran like Kupp would be excellent, and stacking those extra picks would be cool too. Trade up scenario for me here. I'm going to go with the team coming up from the top of the second round back into the first round, and I'm going to go with my Cleveland Browns here. And it's probably a little bit of homer bias, but a little bit not as well, because they have a massive need at left tackle. Jedrick Wills did not work out, former 10th overall pick. He's a free agent. He's not coming back. So you have a massive need at left tackle. Jack Conklin at right tackle, you can argue, is a massive need too. He's got a massive cap hit. So if they can't work out some situation where they agree to lower his base and give him more guarantees, they could cut him as well to clear out some cap space. So I think offensive tackle is a pretty big need, but also Kansas City has a massive need at offensive tackle. Washington has a need at left tackle as well, potentially. Detroit, Taylor Decker is aging. You could see that. Baltimore, Ronnie Stanley, you could see that situation. The Rams could take a left tackle. So we're talking about teams from 26, 27, 28, 29, and 31 who could all reasonably take a left tackle. And so I think the Browns sitting at 33 and knowing they have a need at left tackle, and a guy like Josh Connerly could still be on the board. Minnesota is really lacking draft picks. They have like 3 draft picks in this year's class. So if you could get up to 24, maybe, and maybe target a guy like Josh Connerly there at 24, or maybe if Armand Membao falls to 24, which I really highly doubt how well he's being talked about right now that's going to happen, or even like Josh Simmons if he falls due to his injury, moving up to a spot like 24 gets you in front of the Rams, Ravens, Lions, Commanders, Chiefs, all teams that could realistically take a left tackle or an offensive tackle in general, I guess you could say. So I think the Browns coming up and addressing that offensive line from 33 would be a stellar idea in terms of a trade up.
Yeah, I think the other teams that I would kind of think of outside of the first round to maybe get that 5th year on a potential quarterback, if teams fall in love with Jalen Milroe. So we're looking at the New York Giants, we're looking at the Tennessee Titans, we're looking at the Las Vegas Raiders, the Jets. Milroe for me is kind of the only guy I can see teams wanting to do that with at QB3. I don't know. There's no
upside to Jackson Dart. There's no upside to any other quarterback in the class. Yeah, I would agree with you there.
Yeah.
There just isn't upside to do that. So I think the Browns make the most sense in pursuit of a Josh Connerly or Josh Simmons would be an ideal situation to come up there. Next question here. So this is the Philadelphia Eagles special question. They just won the Super Bowl, and predominantly because they've built a lot of talent out of players who have fallen in the first round for whatever reason. Jalen Carter fell out of the top 10, and they came up and got him at 10, actually, if I'm not mistaken, right? 9. So fell to the back end after being talked about as potentially the top prospect in the class, and obviously
he was the best player in the class.
There was a lot that went into that, obviously, with the day of the combine. That arrest warrant came out, stuff like that. Obviously, the Eagles jumped at the opportunity to draft him. Nolan Smith fell to the back end of the first round after running a 4.39 40-yard dash, and he became a significant contributor in year 2 for them after kind of a slow rookie season. They do it all the time. They find a way to take these guys that, for whatever reason, teams let slide down the board. Obviously, they're sitting at the 32nd pick in the draft. So who are some potential Howie Roseman targets who have fallen down the board for whatever reason that he will draft and they will become significant contributors for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, look at this class. Where are the strengths? There's strengths at edge and there's strengths at defensive tackle. And there are two guys, in my opinion, that could slip down to the end of the first round. I probably wouldn't feel super comfortable with drafting Walter Nolan at 32 just because I don't love him that much. But the potential is there. We've seen the flashes with him. And in an environment like Philadelphia where he does not have to be the guy, he doesn't have to be the second guy.
He has to be Milton Williams.
He has to be Milton Williams. And Milton Williams is about to get paid.
Yeah, he is.
And Milton Williams, similar type of athlete. He's smaller than Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan was a former top recruit. And then you look at somebody like James Pierce, didn't play full-time at Tennessee. Technically, there are things with his game where you would like to see somebody with his athletic skill set play a little bit differently than he does. Plays through the chest a lot, tries to set guys up through the chest a lot when he should just try to win with speed of the arc a little bit more. And I think that that's another opportunity for Philadelphia to jump on a player that is super talented and can work his way slowly into their defense.
Yeah, those are the two. Again, James Pierce came into the season, talked about as potentially the top player in the draft class for a lot of people's boards, a lot of draft mix boards. Again, obviously, some of it's starting to come out socially, like publicly on social media. But since it is out there, I feel comfortable saying some stuff. Like I was told from scouts that Tennessee felt like he had one foot out the door all season, that he was already looking forward to the NFL, and that's why he was on a snap count, and it wasn't injury related, and some things about whether or not he's always coachable, some off the field attitude stuff like that. Are real, and that's why we continue to see him kind of slipping further and further down the board. But James Pierce is the prime example of a player that Howie Roseman would draft in a heartbeat, and say, come into our culture and we'll work with it. So those two guys really stand out. Again, 32 is still rich for Walter Nolan for me as well, because I think I'm probably going to come in with a fringe top 100 grade on him, just because I don't love his anchor. I don't love his body of work against the run game. And then again, I think his pass rush plan is evident and it's flashy, but we've talked about it a lot there. He'll go in game long stretches where it's like, where is Walter Nolan? And that's an issue. So those are the two guys that make the most sense for that question.
Yeah, the next question that we are going to answer is what separates Will Campbell from the rest of the offensive linemen in this class? That answer is nothing for you because he is not your top offensive lineman, correct?
He is my top offensive lineman.
Oh, okay. He is. Okay.
All As a tackle, I would say nothing separates him from the rest of the offensive tackles. But from the offensive lineman, he is my highest graded offensive lineman as a guard. And for me, what that comes down to is just how ox strong he is. You won't beat him through the chest. His grip strength is phenomenal. His hip torque is exceptional when he can get a hold of an edge rusher and get that grip latched and hip torque. It's there. But for me, the biggest knock on Will Campbell is I think he's probably an average athlete, and I think it shows up in how his feet slide as a tackle when he's forced to set at depth or he's forced to match speed off the edge, speed and bend off the edge. That's where I kind of see the issue. But guess what? Those issues are pretty negligible when you kick him inside to guard, because the depth that he would have to set at guard is nothing. And so if I'm saying, Will Campbell can set negligibly or jump and just get his hands on people, then that's where I have a hard time saying, like, I can think of consistent defensive tackles who will be able to work through the chest of Will Campbell, and I can't. So I would say that's what separates him for me is just that ox strong anchor and inability to give up any ground once he's dropped it.
Yeah, it's his core strength and his rotational strength. Absolutely. You see the core strength when he is taking on bull rushers. And it's really impressive for somebody with shorter arms to hold up like that, because he is at a length disadvantage. And that's honestly a big reason why length is pretty overrated. His hands are very good. His grip strength is fantastic, but we something that doesn't get talked about enough is the rotational strength. And that is something that we see him very easily. And I, like you said, I don't think from like an explosiveness perspective, he is insanely explosive. I think he's pretty average in that area. But I do think he is really fluid when it comes to being able to kind of seal rush lanes as a run blocker. And I think part of that comes from that rotational strength and ability to get into the correct positional leverage to seal those rush lanes and to show his ass to the runner coming behind him. So that's something that he does really well. And you know, being on the interior, it's only going to show even more as he's getting downhill and moving guys. So I think there's a really good chance he is a, you know, Brandon Scherf level guard at the NFL level if he plays guard, and he might not. And we've already talked about this too. The league is starving for tackles. So if you think he can play tackle, you play him at tackle and let him fail inside if need be.
For sure. Yeah. When I think about his hip torque and that kind of rotational strength that he has, I just have a rep against Nick Scorton when they played Texas A&M, like stuck in the back of my mind, where he just completely locks him out, torques him, and drives him completely off the ball. And Scorton had some reps on him too as a pass rusher, beating him along the outside shoulder for sure. But I think Will Campbell is also a pretty good opportunity to talk about like when we kick guys into guard and when we don't. And for me, I mean, arm length is there, like it's in the back of my mind if a guy doesn't have foot speed. But that foot speed is that main predicator for me. Like if I don't feel like you have the slide to match speed and bend, that's what I'm talking about you as a guard, not so much as length. If I don't think you have the slide, but you have 34-inch arms, like I think maybe I could still evaluate you as a tackle. But unfortunately for Campbell, and in my opinion, and why I have him graded as a guard, is that he doesn't have the slide and he doesn't have the length. So that's why I have him graded as guard. But yeah, I think what separates him, again, we've talked about it ad nauseum now, is elite core strength, elite play strength, elite hip torque, just an absolute bull. Yeah. Awesome.
That's it.
That's it.
Nothing else.
I got nothing else either. We worked through 1, 2, 4 questions right there at a pretty quick pace. Pretty shorter episode. We're recording pretty late, so we'll probably keep it just at that. But again, thank you guys so much for your input. We'll do a lot more mailbag moving forward, and knowing the pace we can knock them out, we could probably do 8 or 9 questions moving forward if we really wanted to. So, but for now, this has been it for the Daft on Draft podcast. We'll be back tomorrow, so stay tuned for that.